A mountain hovers in the clouds as if it were straight out of the script for Avatar. A desert in East Africa glows in impossible neon, as if the earth itself were leaking colors through open wounds. A lake in Australia turns bubblegum pink and will never be the same again. This is the border where colors warp, as if designed by someone with a rich and limitless imagination. Step into it for a moment, and the familiar world suddenly becomes incredibly small. Welcome to the border, where reality collides with the impossible. "200 miles off the coast of Yemen lies an island so isolated that a third of its species exist nowhere else on Earth. For millions of years, Socotra has evolved in complete isolation, drifting silently along the shores of the Arabian Sea like a forgotten fragment of another world. The first thing you notice are the trees. Dragon's blood trees grow on the plateau with umbrella-shaped foliage that looks more like it was created by human hands than by plants, each branch branching into smaller branches like upside-down coral. When the bark is cut, the sap turns a deep red, as thick as turpentine, and has been used for centuries as a dye, medicine, and myth. Further inland, desert roses grow with trunks that swell into giant teardrops, some twisted as if frozen mid-stretch. They store water inside their bodies, a vivid reminder of the island's harsh seasons. The island is home to a wide variety of wildlife, reptiles with vibrant, exotic patterns. birds with unique calls inside isolated valleys. And tarantulas with cobalt blue legs that glow under certain lights. Even these insects seem designed for a completely different ecosystem. The coastline feels almost theatrical. Limestone cliffs jut out into turquoise waters. Sand dunes stretch straight out to sea. Caves nestled in the folds of rock, carved by winds that shaped the island long before humans arrived. But it's the silence that surprises most visitors. A silence so complete that the whistling of the wind, the murmur of the waves, and your own breathing are strangely present. Standing among the dragon blood trees at sunset, it's easy to imagine you've stepped back in time 20 million years to a version of Earth never recorded in the history books. The Danakil lies more than 300 feet below sea level, in a fissure where the Earth has literally been pulled apart. The ground opens up into acid pools of neon lemon yellow and brilliant turquoise. Minerals rise in rugged terraces that steam in the sun. The salt plain stretches so far that you lose all sense of scale. Nothing soft exists in this environment. No trees, no animals, sometimes not even shadows, which seem to fade into the light. Black volcanic rock meets white salt crust. Patches of sulfur glow so bright a yellow they seem artificial. The air carries a sharp mineral taste, a reminder that this place is alive in a way most landscapes are not. Everything here hisses, seethes, crumbles, and reforms. The silence was made even heavier by the knowledge that you were standing in one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth. An area where summer temperatures reached 130 degrees Fahrenheit. The wave is carved from Navajo sandstone, formed in the Jurassic period nearly 200 million years ago. Its U-shaped basins, sculpted grain by desert winds, The rock curves around you in red and orange ribbons, so smooth they look fluid, a landscape your eyes briefly refuse to accept as solid stone. Walk along the walls, and the ground rises and dips like gentle swells while shadows slide through each fold. Even sound shifts, your voice returning in faint, uneven echoes caught in the spirals. Only a small number of visitors enter each day, making the center feel like a place suspended between motion and stillness. Nearly 100 tepuis rise from the forests of southern Venezuela, but Roraima is the most massive of them all, a four-sided rock fortress that reaches straight into the clouds. Its summit is a stone table formed more than 2 billion years ago, one of the oldest exposed rock formations on the planet. Steep cliffs rise high, some more than half a mile high. Mist rolls over the edges like slow silver waterfalls, enveloping the plateau in its own weather system. Climb to the top, and the landscape transforms. Sculpted sandstone corridors, stadium-sized sinkholes, and rocks polished by millions of years of rain. Life here has its own rules. Carnivorous plants cling to narrow cracks in the rock. Tiny black frogs, found nowhere else on Earth, live in pockets of water formed after storms. Standing on the edge, you see the rainforest spread out below like an endless green tide. It's easy to see why early explorers believed the plateau harbored creatures untouched by time, and why storytellers envisioned it as a gateway to unexplored worlds. Roraima even shaped modern fiction. Pixar modeled the iconic Paradise Falls in Up after the sheer cliffs and flat tops of the Guiana Shield, drawing direct inspiration from the image of Roraima rising like a monolith through the clouds. In the middle of the Nevada desert, a 5-meter-high volcanic cone erupts with colors no natural hot spring could. A well drilled in the 1960s penetrated a geothermal pocket, and the land responded by building its own monument. Minerals rise with the steam, solidifying layer by layer into a cone dotted with red. Green and yellow, tropical algae add their own hues, turning the surface into a vibrant palette that changes with the seasons and the light. The geyser is only a few feet high, but it feels strangely alive. Small, surreal, and entirely accidental, Fly Geyser is proof that even mistakes can create beauty, sometimes beauty that no one could have foreseen. Wadi Rum is hidden in the desert of southern Jordan, with an area of more than 700 square kilometers. This is also the place that records the imprint of many ancient civilizations from the Stone Age. Towering sandstone walls rise from the flat red sand, the surface eroded by the wind into smooth faces and sharp angles. Light moves quickly here. Shadows stretch, collapse, and reshape the valley as the hours pass. The landscape is almost empty, and it is this emptiness that makes it unforgettable. Sounds echo across the plain, and even a footstep sounds louder than usual. As the sun sets, the cliffs turn a dark bronze color, and the sand turns a deep red. The whole valley glows as if lit from within. Seven, Lake Hillier, Australia. Lake Hillier is a permanent pink strip on the edge of Middle Island that stays the same color year-round, even in a bottle. Just steps from the deep blue ocean. The lake is separated by a narrow strip of sand and eucalyptus forest, making the contrast even more striking. The lake's vibrant color comes from Dunaliella salina, a halophyte that thrives in conditions where most other organisms cannot survive. From above, the lake shores curve like polished gemstones. Below ground, the warm, still air carries the scent of coastal vegetation. A single, consistent patch of pink stands out against a backdrop of blues and greens. The Great Blue Hole is more than just a beautiful circle in the Caribbean Sea. Nearly 300 meters wide and more than 120 meters deep, it is an entrance to a world that should not exist underwater. This giant sea sinkhole was once a dry limestone cave, formed during the last ice age. when sea levels were hundreds of feet lower than they are today. When the ice melted, rising seawater swallowed the cave. The ceiling collapsed, and what remained was a perfect vertical tunnel that plunged into darkness. The upper rim glows and is alive, surrounded by coral from the Mesoamerican barrier reef. Reef sharks, midnight parrotfish, and giant groupers patrol the edges like guardians of the boundary between two worlds. But deeper down, ancient stalactites appear along the walls, some taller than a human head, still intact after more than 10,000 years under the sea. At about 35 meters, the water becomes eerily still. Oxygen dwindles. Life thins. Over and over, the blue fades to a heavy, almost impenetrable black. Here, divers describe an eerie stillness, as if the ocean itself were holding its breath. In the summer, Spotted Lake looks as if someone scattered hundreds of glittering coins across the desert. Each circle is a separate lake, and each lake contains a different concentration of minerals. As the water evaporates in the Okanagan heat, the lake breaks into perfect circles of gold, green, white, sometimes almost metallic like a giant chemical palette exposed to the sun. What surprises most visitors is that these spots are not random. They form because the lake contains one of the densest natural mineral deposits on the continent. Magnesium sulfate, calcium, sodium and trace elements crystallize into outlines that look artificially created, as if someone had sketched each lake by hand. Walking along the lake's shore, you can hear the mineral crust cracking under the heat. Some pools turn to gel, others harden into solid shapes. All of them slowly change with the seasons, creating different shapes for the lake each year, as if it were redrawing itself like a living mosaic. For generations, the indigenous community has regarded this place as a natural healing site. Each lake is said to possess its own unique properties. A flooded desert, a place with dunes but no drought. A landscape that should be at odds with itself, yet somehow thrives on that contradiction. For most of the year, this area is a vast field of white sand, undulated by the Atlantic winds into waves. But when the rainy season arrives, something magical happens. The dunes trap rainwater in the valley, creating thousands of crystal-clear lagoons, each a different shade of blue or green, each temporary, and each so pure that you can see ripples of sand beneath the surface. What makes this scene even more strange is that these lagoons are not shallow pools. Some are up to 3 or 4 meters deep, deep enough to swim in, cold enough to feel like hidden streams in the desert. Fish are still present in the water despite the absence of rivers, brought in as eggs by seasonal birds, surviving in ways that seem almost pre-designed. Seen from above, the landscape looks like a giant silken sheet fluttering in the wind, dotted with turquoise lenses that change position each year. The lagoons never form in exactly the same place twice. And then, when the dry season returns, the water disappears as mysteriously as it arrived, leaving the sands smooth as if nothing had happened. On Vadhu Island, the shoreline lights up at night as if liquid starlight is washing over the sand. The glow comes from millions of bioluminescent dinoflagellates releasing luciferin, flashing bright blue whenever waves break or footsteps disturb the water. Even the slightest movement can trigger an entire stretch of surf to ignite, turning the beach into a living constellation. Under ideal conditions, the glow intensifies until the waves resemble neon lines tracing the shoreline. Maldivians call the phenomenon Red Hunlun, a sight long woven into local stories that speak to the power and mystery of the glowing sea. An interesting legend gives this river its name. It is said that when God created the universe, He painted the sky. When He finished, He washed His brush in the river, creating the beautiful blue we see today at Rio Celeste Falls. Rio Celeste looks magical even before you hit the water. The rainforest fades, the air cools, and then the river appears, a turquoise so intense it seems lit from within. Amazingly, you see two crystal-clear rivers merging, at a point the locals call El Teñidero, the Daya. The moment they meet, the water turns a bright blue in seconds. It's a microscopic reaction. Suspended mineral particles in one river collide with acidic water from the other, coalescing into tiny solid particles that scatter just enough light to create that eerie color. Lakes sparkle, waterfalls tumble into pools that look like they've been painted in a sci-fi movie. Every bend in the river is a deep turquoise, as if the entire landscape were bathed in molten sky. The sandstone pillars of Zhangjiajie don't look like they were formed by erosion. They look like they're floating, hundreds of giant pillars rising straight out of the forest, some so thin and tall they don't seem to balance on anything. Some towers are over 3,000 feet tall, each carved over millions of years by water, ice, and wind, cutting into the quartz sandstone from all sides. What remains are vertical spires with flat tops, sharp edges, and sheer cliffs, rising from the mist. When the clouds roll in, the pillars don't disappear, they float. The base of the pillars disappears into the mist, leaving only the tops exposed, floating like islands on an invisible sea. It's the image that inspired the floating mountains in Avatar, and it looks even more incredible in real life. Walking along the cliff paths, you will hear the wind blowing through the towers, as if walking through corridors. Some pillars are so narrow that you can stretch out your hand and almost touch both sides. Others stand in clusters, forming stone mazes where sunlight falls to the ground in thin, pale rays. Zhangjiajie is a stone forest, a complete vertical world created not by growth, but by gradually removing everything that once existed around it. granite wall, over 12 meters high, curves forward in a perfect curve. Its entire surface painted with streaks of light and dark that flow like liquid metal. The shape is the result of thousands of years of water slowly eating into the rock bed, carving its way deeper and deeper until the top protrudes like a breaking wave. Standing at the base of the falls, you will see the protruding part appear above, smooth as if polished. Touching the surface, you can feel the small grooves left by the flowing water, each millimeter shaping the face of the falls. From a distance, the structure looks like an unrealistic tectonic work, a wave rising from solid ground, frozen just before impact. Vitsakur stands alone in the water, like a creature that has strayed too close to shore and turned to stone halfway. The basalt boulder is nearly 15 meters high, its base shaped by the waves into arches, seemingly with legs, curved, sturdy, and strangely animal-like. The lava once solidified into a solid mass, and centuries of ocean erosion have eroded everything except this one stubborn pillar. Seabirds cover the summit like fluttering feathers, making the silhouette seem even more dynamic than it should be. Legend has it that Vitsakur is a giant petrified demon. This giant demon lives in Strandir in the Vestfjords and wants to destroy the bells at the monastery of Thingeyraklauster. The Bungle Bungle Range is located in the Kimberley region of Western Australia. In the remote northwest of this vast continent, the Bungle Bungle looks like a giant swarm of bees dropped into the outback, hundreds of striped domes rising from the plains in patterns too precise to be random. Each dome is built from sandstone, formed over 20 million years of rain and wind. The orange and black bands are literally alive. Dark layers absorb moisture and harbor thin layers of cyanobacteria, while lighter layers stay dry and reflect heat. From above, the range stretches for miles in dense clusters, as if the Earth had folded this part of Australia into an intricate maze. Narrow gorges run between the domes, some so narrow that only a sliver of sunlight reaches the ground at midday. Inside these chasms, the walls rise in perfect curves overhead, and the air is suddenly cool. A natural sculpture garden of almost architectural proportions. Behind a thin layer of water, in a quiet forest near Buffalo, a fire burns where no fire should. Eternal Flame Falls is powered by a pocket of naturally occurring methane gas seeping from cracks in ancient shale. Most methane leaks are too widely dispersed to ignite, but here the gas escapes in a concentrated stream strong enough to sustain a continuous burn. The result is a candle trapped inside the waterfall. Waterfalls, flame stays still. Even if the flame goes out in the middle of a heavy rainstorm, a single match can instantly relight it. And the surrounding rock face, gently warmed by the heat, also glowed just enough to make the surrounding mist shimmer in a pale orange light. Here El Agua looks like two waterfalls frozen in midair. White streams of water cascading down the cliffs without moving. But as you get closer, the truth emerges. These waterfalls are not water at all. They are mineral deposits, formed drop by drop over thousands of years. Spring water, rich in calcium and carbonates, flows up from the mountain and spills down the cliff edge. As it flows down, the minerals crystallize, slowly forming thin layers that mimic flowing water. What you see today is the accumulation of countless ancient drops, preserved in the rock like a time-lapse film made real. The steps perched on the cliff edge are filled with turquoise water so clear you can see the mineral bands below. Standing on the shore of the lake, the valley opens up below, while the white waterfalls tumble hundreds of meters down the side. It feels like standing in the middle of a geological mirage. Water behaves like rock, and rock pretends to be water. Off the coast of Yonaguni, the seafloor suddenly drops off into a series of giant platforms, right angles, straight edges, towering walls so sharp and purposeful that the first divers to discover them in the 1980s thought they had found a sunken city. The structures stretch for hundreds of feet. Wide steps lead down into perfectly geometric layers. Vertical walls rise as if carved by giant tools. Some sections look strangely like corridors or staircases leading down to deeper water. A monolith nearly 20 feet high, its edges meeting at angles too neat to be random. Nearby, a triangular mass looks like a perfectly cut ramp. Beneath it, massive slabs of stone lie stacked like fallen columns. Geologists say the site is natural. Sandstone fractured by tectonic pressure, shaped by currents, eroded by time. Swim through the area and you'll feel the tension immediately. Some parts look like pure geology. Others have an uneasy architectural feel, as if something had been there before the ocean swallowed it. Just off North Bimini Island, a straight line of giant limestone blocks lies beneath the shallow turquoise water. Arranged so neatly, they look like the foundations of an ancient pier, forgotten by time. Each block is rectangular, some more than 12 feet long, all stacked in a pattern that stretches nearly half a mile. The stones lie like paving slabs, 3 rows wide, their edges meeting too closely to resemble a natural rubble field. Some blocks are stacked on top of each other, forming what look like steps or crumbling walls. Others show smooth, flat surfaces as if they had been cut. The area has sparked much speculation for decades, some connected to ancient maritime cultures, others connected to the Atlantis myths. Bimini Road looks like a forgotten road carved into the ocean, a doorway into an inexplicable past. Kolmanskop looks like a town that stopped breathing mid-run and was silently wiped out by the desert. Once a thriving German settlement thanks to the diamond rush of the early 1900s, it collapsed overnight when richer mines were found elsewhere. Today, entire houses are half buried. Doors open into rooms submerged in waist-high sand dunes. Stairs climb to ceilings that no longer exist. Wallpaper peels in curved strips, revealing colors that have somehow survived a century of heat and silence. What strikes visitors most is that everything is still intact. The bathroom tiles are still firmly attached. The blackboard in the classroom is still intact. The kitchen shelves are still lined up neatly, only now the desert has washed over them like flour. The wind blew sand through the windows, creating gentle waves that rose and fell inside each building, turning each room into a miniature desert. Walk through the hospital or the ballroom, and you would feel the soft floor under your feet, as if the entire structure was slowly dissolving into sand dunes. Kolmanskop was disappearing, but not in chaos. Built in 1692, Parotaktsang Monastery sits nearly 3,000 feet above the valley floor, on a rocky outcrop no larger than a courtyard. Its white walls and golden roof pressed against the rough granite like a swallow's nest. The shock begins when you realize how it was built. Materials were hauled up the cliff by hand along narrow mountain paths. Some pieces were carried on the backs of monks, others were pulled by rope across the chasm. There are no smooth paths, just steep turns, stone steps cut into the mountainside, and the air gets thinner with each ascent. Legend has it that Padmasambhava meditated here after flying to the cliff on the back of a tiger. Standing on the balcony, clouds drift across the horizon. The valley lies far below, softened by the distance. Inside, prayer halls glow with butter lamps. Outside, the cliffs stood sheer, leaving no gaps. The monastery seemed to rely as much on faith as on stone. Kelimutu has more than one volcanic lake. It has 3 lakes, side by side in the same crater. Each lake emits a different color, each changing unpredictably over time. 2 lakes share the same mountain, the same rain, the same sunlight, yet one lake can turn deep turquoise, another blood red, and the third sinks into a thick black that barely reflects anything. Volcanic gases rise through fissures beneath each lake, stirring up different minerals that create chemical reactions. Iron, manganese, sulfur. They combine in changing formulas that make the lakes change color dramatically. Standing on the edge of the lake at dawn, the colors become even more strange. The turquoise lake glows like diluted neon. The dark lake swallows the light, becoming a black mirror. The red or brown lake between the two lakes is like a pool of molten metal, warm but cold to the touch. Locals believe that these lakes hold the souls of the deceased, separated by the lives they have lived. A lagoon surrounded by towering sand dunes. Dunes so high, they swallow up the horizon. Yet here, in the middle of the Peruvian desert, lies an emerald lake protected by a ring of palm trees. You walk through miles of shifting, wind-eroded, empty sand, and then suddenly a perfect oasis appears, as if someone had placed it there for dramatic effect. The lagoon is fed by natural underground springs, rare pockets of water trapped beneath layers of desert sediment. Without them, the entire settlement would disappear in a matter of days. The dunes around Huacachina tower like walls, some more than 90 meters high. Climb a dune at sunset, and the lagoon shrinks to a brilliant emerald dot surrounded by golden shadows. What makes this oasis even more extraordinary is its longevity. Most desert lagoons dry up or migrate over time, but this one has remained in place for generations, kept just right by the underground aquifers hidden beneath. Chapter 5: Extreme Nature. Panjin Red Beach is located in China's Bohai Bay, about 40 kilometers 25 miles from Panjin City, Liaoning Province. The ground turns crimson as the entire coastline transforms into a living carpet of suidai, a salt-loving plant that starts green in the spring and turns a brilliant red in the fall, almost digital. This is no small patch of color, but the world's largest wetland of its kind, stretching for miles across the tidal flats near Panjin. At its peak, the landscape transforms into a crimson ocean, with water literally weaving through the vegetation like dark, winding rivers. Sueda can only grow in highly saline marshes, and it can only achieve its blood-red hue after enduring months of harsh coastal conditions. Most plants die in such salty water. Sueda thrives, turning the entire ecosystem into a living pigment. Walking along the elevated boardwalk, you will see the wetlands stretching in all directions, a velvety red plain with a distinctive texture broken only by narrow channels where birds gather in flocks. Every tide creates color. Every wind blows waves through the vegetation, like movement on canvas. Kauai is known for its 1-kilometer-wide turquoise crater lake, one of the most acidic bodies of water on Earth. Beneath the rim, sulfur-rich gases escape through vents at temperatures high enough to ignite on contact with oxygen, producing the blue flames that make this crater unique. Some flicker like sparks, while others rise several meters, lighting the rock walls in the dark. In places, the gas condenses into liquid sulfur that flows downhill in glowing streams before cooling into bright yellow crystals at sunrise. Miners navigate the fumes and fire at night, extracting solid sulfur by hand. "800 feet below Naka, the air grew hot and thick. Then the crystals appeared, huge masses, some more than 30 feet long, streaking across the chamber like frozen lightning bolts. These were selenite crystals, the largest ever found on Earth. They formed slowly inside a pocket of mineral-rich water, undisturbed for hundreds of thousands of years. The temperature remained near 130 degrees Fahrenheit, about 60 degrees Celsius, ideal for continued growth. As miners pumped away the groundwater, the chamber dried up, and the crystals emerged from the darkness intact. Individual beams weighed tons. Their surfaces glowed softly, reflecting light like etched glass. Some grew parallel, others intersected at sharp angles, forming geometric pillars you could climb if the temperature didn't make long exposure dangerous. The humidity is almost 100%, and the heat can suffocate visitors in minutes without protective gear. The warped forest looked normal until its trunks bent. Hundreds of pines, each sharply bent at the base in a perfect 90-degree curve before straightening again. Each leaned northward at the same angle, as if shaped by a single, deliberate act. Theories ranged from wood-shaping experiments to wartime machinery, but none quite fit. Standing among them felt like walking through rows of wooden question marks, precise, synchronized, yet still completely unexplained. At the edge of Taylor Glacier, a crimson streak stretches across the pristine white ice, a color so vivid it looks as if the glacier has been injured. About 5 million years ago, a pocket of ancient seawater was trapped beneath the glacier. In total darkness, cut off from oxygen, isolated from the outside world, the water evolved into a brine so salty it remains liquid, even at sub-zero temperatures. Inside, it is a microbial ecosystem unlike any other on Earth. The creatures survive without sunlight, feeding on iron and sulfur in complete isolation. When the brine finally seeps through cracks in the ice, the iron inside oxidizes when exposed to air, turning the water blood red as soon as it emerges. The water remains hidden hundreds of feet below, sealed in conditions similar to what scientists predict on icy moons like Europa. In the silence of Antarctica, the red streak looks almost unreal, a glacier oozing the memory of a vanished ocean. Bryce Canyon is not really a canyon, but a vast natural arena of sandstone cliffs, with thousands of towering rock formations rising so close together they look like an army frozen in mid-March. These rock formations are called hoodoos. Some are just a few feet high. Others are more than 150 feet tall, stacked in thin, uneven layers of red, orange, and white. According to Paiute legend, the hoodoos in the canyon were created by the coyote, who turned the gluttonous Tuwenanungwa, the legendary one, into stone. Water is the sculptor here. In winter, meltwater seeps into tiny cracks in the rock. Overnight, it freezes and expands, splitting the rocks one by one. Thousands of freeze-thaw cycles collapse the weaker sections, leaving tall, narrow pinnacles that look almost intentional. The descent into the maze was even more bizarre. Towering towers flanked the path, turning it into a stone corridor whose hues changed with the angle of the sun. Some of the hoodoos were supported by heavy, solid boulders that sheltered the slender pillars below, giving them strange silhouettes that resembled watchmen, monks, sentinels, anything the imagination could conjure. Each journey through these magnificent landscapes reminds us that Earth never repeats itself. Its beauty appears in unexpected forms: pink lakes, blue fire, floating mountains, forests carved from stone. Each place has its own story, its own rhythm, and its own way of reshaping the way we see the world. See you next time, where the unexpected is still waiting to be seen.